Hi, this is Ted with Alamo Music Center in beautiful downtown San Antonio, Texas. Today, I'm visiting with Dr. Jean Park from University of Incarnate Word and also San Antonio College, and she is a member of the piano faculty at both places. We're going to be talking about a Playful Piano Competition event that was held here at the store, and she was one of the judges. So we're going to get a little bit of insight into being a competitor and what the judges look for. Stick around, it'll be insightful, and I promise we're going to learn something. Dr. Jean, I'm excited to have you here. And before we get into questions about competition, I just want to ask you, how do you feel about the event? How did it go for you? Was it fun? Was it exciting? Because I heard some phenomenal players. That's all I can tell you. It was really exciting.
Yeah, it is always super fun to be able to hear young pianists play. I enjoy it. It's just fun. It's so fun. You get to see, this was a 2-round competition, so we got to see them play in video, and then it was so much fun to be able to actually see them in person.
Right. That's wonderful. Let me ask you, what is your experience with competition? Did you start off as a student and then kind of do pretty good and then go more and more and end up being a judge? What's kind of a short story of that?
Yeah, so I have done I guess 3 different points of access to competitions. The first is, I've done a few myself, not a lot, but a few. And the second is I've organized a competition before. And the third is I've judged competitions as well. So the competition that I organized before was when I used to live in New York.
Okay.
It was for the Piano Teachers Congress, and it was kind of like their capstone program. And I and a co-chair, we chaired their honors competition, which included, for the young pianists, the final prize of performing in Carnegie Hall. So that was a really...
That's so exciting.
Yes, it was. So I got to see the whole process from the inside, organizing the competition, picking out the judges, like watching the kids go through all their rounds. So it was a really fun.
So organizing is more of an acid test to like a balancing of skills then, right? Because you have to get judges, you have to get students, you have to get locations and venues.
Yes, organizing is a whole nother thing, and it is a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. And the students who play are phenomenal, so
right.
That's always like the reward. And also, judging competitions is also, as I've gone through my career, which I would say is still, on its way to getting started, I was able to see kind of like different aspects of competition, and you kind of learn things from seeing it from all the different angles.
What was your first competition like as a student? Were you nerved up? Were you cool with it? Was it calm? Or did you just look at everyone else and realize, hey, we're all nervous?
I actually don't remember my first competition. I must have done it, when I was younger. But I will say that I was never really one of those like competition pianists. I wasn't somebody who was always preparing for competitions, entering competitions. And part of the reason for that was I was never planning on doing piano as a career. And so in fact, in high school, I even quit piano.
Okay, what was the career choice? If not piano, it was what?
Yeah,
I have to ask.
I was admitted into the University of Washington as a freshman into the business program. And so I thought that's what I was gonna do for a career. And I had already, at that point in time, quit piano for at least a few years. And then I realized that from 15 to 18 credits at the college, the tuition was the same. So private lessons on piano were 3 credits, and I was like, well, why wouldn't I want some basically free piano lessons, because it fits into my credit structure at university. So I started taking piano on the side just for fun in college. And then one thing led to another, and then I ended up after college choosing to pursue piano as a career. So I was kind of a late bloomer maybe.
That's interesting. That's really interesting, because a lot of times you see pianists, whether they're artists or composers or just people that enjoy playing or they want to play with an orchestra, they go the other way. They get
Right.
out of the music business because there's no money in it, and they go
Yes.
into business.
So they're
How-
smarter than me.
no, yeah, I guess,
Yes,
but you know,
they're a lot smarter.
there's nothing smarter than experience. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be yours. It can be someone else's, and sometimes it's hard to learn from someone else's experience. I know I was in the banking business for 20 years, and I remember the bosses told me, "Man, if you can do something else, get out of here, go do it." And that was the downside of business, because
Right.
when you find people that are successful in business, they're saying, if you can do something else, man, go do it. Because not too many people can do that, can play piano, let alone organize competitions and then judge them. So what was your first judging experience like?
My first judging experience, I think it was when, well, I have done a bunch of adjudicating prior to, so it's very similar, adjudicating and judging. The only difference is that for non-competitive events, for adjudicating, you're really just writing comments and you're kind of like ranking them in terms of like
Right.
preparation. So like a common like ranking would be like superior or excellent or
Right.
that kind of ranking, and it's a very short leap to go from that to be like, okay, now you have to write comments and now you have to decide who is first, second, third, and so on.
It's almost like
So-
being a scout for a major league sporting
Right,
team.
it's like
or
a short
something.
leap
Right.
from one to the other. So, I did some adjudicating while I was still living in New York, and that's where I did my master's and my doctoral studies was in New York. And then I came here to San Antonio. The first competition I judged was the Hodges competition here in San Antonio, and that's held at UTSA, and it's a really fun competition where students play contemporary works, and you get to.
That's a little bit different than I guess the stuffiness of a classical performance, because
Well, there's still classical music, but
yes.
it is contemporary pieces, so you get different kinds of music. Yeah.
Right, different. I know there's a lot of percussive pieces, and there's some pieces that always seem to stand out at competitions, or ones that most pianists would think, that's not really a piano piece. That's more like a percussion piece. And then you got to remember that
Well, the piano is a percussion instrument. You were
okay?
leading me to that
Exactly,
comment.
exactly. But the other thing, what's your view on some of the pros and cons? Because I've had some different kind of views on, piano competitions. Some people think competitions are for horses and not necessarily for artists. But a lot of times, in order to become that artist, you have to get through those major milestones. And you think about some of the great classical pianists and recording artists of, say, like the last 50 years. There's a milestone win in there, in their resume someplace. But then on the other side, there's some people that are just born to compete no matter what they do. And those are the ones that do really, really well as piano performers. What are some of your thoughts on that? Obviously, you've got a real good balance because you've organized and you've judged and you've competed. So what are your thoughts on that? Because
Yeah.
it's really two different personalities of the players.
Right, yeah, there's a lot to unpack from that. So I think at the fundamental level, I do agree that competitions are not the be-all, end-all. Like, you can be a fantastic musician and never win a single competition. There are, I'm sure, musicians out there who have wonderful careers who have never won a competition. There are also musicians who are out there who their careers were launched because of certain major competitions, and that is also very common. So I think as a musician, there is no set path, and that's just the thing about music. There is no set path.
Right.
And so you can be successful with or without competitions. And it does take a certain type of person to do well at competitions. And there are pros and cons to all of that. So I do think competitions can be helpful. I also kind of see them as like a necessary evil. And there's a large pro and con list that I can kind of like think about in regards to competition. And I can just kind of name some of those pros and cons like off the top of my head if
Right.
you want me to. So like some pros of competitions are that like some people get recognized who are fantastic musicians, so they get some recognition,
Right.
they get some encouragement from that. They get all competitions that have like where they allow judges to write comments. Those are really helpful because even if you didn't win, you can learn from the experience.
You see how other people see you
And
performing.
then the other positive of competition is that you have basically set yourself a goal, right? So you're saying, I'm going to prepare myself for this competition, and you have a set time and day that that's due, so you're going to work for that goal. And so I think the goal setting is really wonderful. And then lastly, another pro of competitions is that it really teaches you, well, I hope it teaches you good sportsmanship, because you are likely not to win. There's the odds are not in your favor.
Right.
I mean, there are fantastic pianists who will do well at one competition and not at another. So anyway, sportsmanship is another aspect of that, and being able to be happy for somebody else's win and happy that they're a great musician without feeling that it's an
Right.
attack on you. So the cons now. The cons are not always are the best musicians chosen as winners of a competition. And that should come as no surprise because judging is very subjective and everyone has what they're listening for. And sometimes people are able to win not because they're the best musician, but because they were smart about their repertoire choice, or they were smart about like how they prepared for it. They didn't choose any pieces to play which showed their weaknesses. And so there is the double-edged sword for competitions, which is if you are always doing competitions, then you are always kind of playing pieces that show off your strengths. And if you're always doing that, then you don't have the time to work on your weaknesses as a musician. And if you were always kind of having to have pieces ready for competitions, then you don't have as much time to like learn other music. So it's a double-edged sword for that reason. You need to be able to play pieces you're not good at and to have time to learn like a wide variety of repertoire. And competitions don't necessarily allow for that.
Right.
There are competitions, however, that have like free repertoire or whatever. So it depends, what I'm talking about. And then the other kind of big con I see from competitions are that if you put too much stock in what a judge says about your playing, and you allow them to tell you if you are any good, that is a problem. So
Well, that's the one thing, because I guess the pros and cons for me, and not that my opinion matters, has always been, it is like the maturity process of the player, because a lot of people are drawn to the music and performance on piano because they're a sensitive individual.
Right.
And they feel the passion in the music. And then to take a person that is very highly sensitive like that and put them in a highly competitive thing is usually either a breakdown or a conversion. However, I have noticed that a lot of the ones that win the competitions, when you mention weakness, the first thing that comes to mind is the slow, somber, dark passages are always played, just for the most part at competition level, as if there wasn't much emotion there. That seems to be what's lacking. And it's the two types of personalities, the ones that are, oh, I hate competitions. And then the ones that I can't wait to get there. And those two types of players are at opposite ends of the personality spectrum.
Right.
And they twist into these competitions, and that is a growing process.
Right, and it's like a lot of times you go into a competition and you don't know who the judges are and you don't know what they're looking for, right? So competitions tend to, I'm just talking about in general, and they tend to favor, flashier repertoire.
Right.
They tend to favor technical chops and perfection more than they may favor artistic expression. Now, that's not necessarily what I think. When I'm
Right,
judging,
right.
I'm not looking for note perfect. I'm looking for somebody who's really saying something. But everyone is different, and you could go into a competition and play a piece that's like really well known. Let's say you go and you play Chopin's First Ballade. Well, what's the problem with the selection of a piece like that is that everyone has an opinion about that piece. So you could go into a competition, you could sound phenomenal, you could say it your way, and it's wonderful, and then the judge will say, well, I don't like how they did this, and it's because they have an opinion about it, right? So like competitions also kind of reward you
Judges
picking.
bring luggage.
Yes, everyone brings luggage, and there's like kind of that dirtier side of competitions we don't like to think about. We always want to think that the best person will win, and that's what I want, what and hope for when I'm judging, but you just never know. And so as a competitor, you just never want to take stock in whether your value as a pianist, as a musician, is like, it's not tied in whether you place or not.
Right.
Right. So you have to understand inherently that you may not place first, second, or third, but you offer something as a musician and have confidence in that. And that's really what will give you a future in music and not competition.
Well, it does take a strong personality to keep going to competitions. When you think about someone pursuing piano and possible interest as a career at a young age, how many diving competitions and gymnastic competitions do young aspiring athletes and students go to where they don't even place anywhere near the top 10 or 20? And it's the same thing for piano.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, take it as a learning experience. If you happen to win, you can celebrate it. But I think if you enter a competition at all, you should be celebrating yourself.
Absolutely.
That is a milestone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, what I think we're going to do here is we're going to go take a look at some of the activity from the Playful Piano Competition.
Wonderful.
And then we're going to come back and get some wrap-up thoughts from you, and then anything in general about piano and how it still inspires you and brings you forward every single day we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Hope you enjoyed watching. Those players there, those were the 3 winners that we had a brief look and listen to from the Playful Piano Competition. And we are now visiting again with Dr. Gene Park. And what was interesting about this competition is that it was playful. Now, have you had any experience with competition where there is like interpretation, or they create their own piece, or they have their own compositions that they play and they bring that out as part?
One pianist in this competition who was a jazz pianist who did his own improvisation. It was really cool. He was really good.
Oh, have you sat as a judge on improv competitions before?
No,
Or is
not typically. That is not my area of expertise.
How would you feel about doing that? You just would not want to do it? Would you be interested, or would you just kind of sideline it for a couple of times? I'm just kind of interested to see.
How would I judge improv? You know, I think that's best for a jazz musician to judge. But if it's a general competition where that is included, I would feel comfortable judging it. It's just, you know.
When you're judging something and it's a piece that you know backwards and forwards and it comes out, I don't want to use the word trite, but sometimes the selection is just trite. Is it hard to be like really impartial if you have students performing the same piece? Have you had that before?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I've definitely done events. Well, I mean, there's some competitions where like the repertoire is set, so everyone's playing like the same few pieces.
Right.
And really, I don't have a mold that I'm looking to put students into, so I'm not looking for students to play it a certain way. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the score and I'm listening to what they're playing, and I'm thinking, did they give integrity to what is in the score? Are they saying something? Did they, there's this kind of like charisma you need on stage to really be able to communicate with the audience. That's really what music is about. So did what they do say something? Is it rhythmically vital? Are they making beautiful sounds? That's
Right,
what
right.
I'm looking for. I don't really care that everyone sounds like everybody else. There's no fun in that.
Well, I noticed that I've been to competitions just to observe. And when you see the same piece coming up, all of a sudden, there's one student that comes out and you know what you're gonna hear, but they stretch, or the fabric just fits better. And I don't know if it's showmanship or just the complete, accuracy of performance, but it also seems to have the right amount of humanity or human spirit to it, to where
Right.
it actually becomes something different in that one performer's hands, as it did. It's less mechanical, it just breathes. It's like the song has its own existence through that person. And that's kind of the magic thing that I would always be looking for in a performer. But then again, I don't judge, but I'm thinking, I wonder if it is that, or if it's just really all the rules and the technicality, and someone goes out there and does it with a lot of panache and flash, they're gonna win. I would think. No?
It all depends. It really depends. Like, it's not just about like flash. Yeah, there's a variety of things, like I said, that I would be looking for. So, does it fit the score? Does the rhythm of it have like a dance to it, or like a vitality to it? Does the melodies carry? How are the sounds and colors they're making? How is their technique? Do they look like they're at ease on the piano? That's kind of what I'm looking for. Really, if they're saying something meaningful and they are being truthful to the score, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And then there's like an it factor too. That's I think what you're referring to. Like, there's a certain amount of personality and charisma that you would.
And it could just be that one song at that one time with that performer, because another week a different song, and it just may not click like that.
That could absolutely be true. Yeah, we tend to. Some people have more affinity for certain pieces or composers, and
Well, I also believe that at the level of musicianship and competition, that the players are exactly like athletes. If they don't peak on that day, there's no way they're going to go home with a trophy, so to speak.
That's exactly. So that's the other thing about competitions. You are looking at a very small slice of that musician's work, right? And in that moment, it's like what they can deliver in that moment. But maybe they sound 10 times better in the practice room, and you don't know that.
It's all balance beam.
Right.
It's all like the Olympic. I mean, it comes down to those skills right there. And one last question, because you're so active in teaching in student bases. What advice do you have for a young pianist that maybe hasn't even hit the intermediate stage, but they're just fascinated with the concept of doing this for a job in terms of competitions? What advice do you have for, regardless of age, any pianist that's thinking about
Right. Yeah.
getting into competition?
I think so. Competitions, like I said, double-edged sword. Do them, but don't overdo them, and take them with a grain of salt. Right? Like just don't put your stock in it. Do them as like part of your regular practice, but don't put too much of your worth into it. I think really, as a young musician, what you are looking for in a teacher is a teacher that is ultimately looking to teach themselves out of a job. So a teacher's job is to prepare a student so that they can be their own musician, not a copy of the teacher,
Right.
not a... And you know who was fantastic at this was my teacher, Gil Kalish, who I did my doctoral studies with at Stony Brook. He's an amazing pianist, but the amazing thing about his teaching is that you could sit and for a lesson with him, and he wouldn't try to make you sound like himself. He wanted you to sound like you, and he wanted to make you the best version of you that he could do. And he was, amazing at this. He's an amazing teacher.
Confidence booster.
Yeah, and so I think as a teacher, that is your job, is to teach yourself out of a job, give the musician that is learning with you the tools to be able to do the things they want to do. So that means you're going to have to teach them technique. You're going to have to teach them what amount of rubato is tasteful, because students don't always know that at the
Right.
beginning. You're going to have to teach them style. You're going to have to teach them how to make different colors at the piano. You're going to have to teach them how to count, right? All those things are things that you have to teach. You have to teach them like the theoretical basis on which everything, like the music theory behind everything, the harmonic language, so that they understand what they're doing. And then the teacher's job is to then slowly step back. And students nowadays, I feel like, or not nowadays, in all time, and I face this too, when you're young or when you're starting out, you ask the teacher about everything. You trust the teacher's interpretation more than your own interpretation, and you never know if you did any good because you
Right,
haven't learned
right.
that. So you're asking the teacher, do I do it like this? Do I do this? What's better? How do I do it right? And that's okay, but you have to grow out of that to really become a musician. Like at a certain point, you have to be able to say, this is exactly the way this needs to be played because this is how I feel it, and I've done the work, and that I can play it well, and I've observed what is on the score, but there is never everything on the score that you need. There is your interpretation of it, right? So a composer cannot micromanage you to the point of playing exactly how they want you. But
Right.
a lot of times, and if you play new music, like where composers are still alive, and you play something, they'll come and say, oh, well, I didn't think about it like that, but I liked what you did with what I wrote. And that is the same thing. Like composers, once they've written their thing, they've done the score, and that's what you have. Now you have to make sense out of it, and you have to deliver what beauty and meaning that you are getting from the score. So I think students, they need to aim for that, and they need to, like I said, not derive their meaning from both competitions or even like what their teacher says, but to kind of push on and to find that artistic voice of their own.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for the insight.
Yeah.
We've been visiting with Dr. Jean Park from the University of Incarnate Word and San Antonio piano faculty, and she had judged the Playful Piano Competition here at Alamo Music Center, and we thank you so much. Dr. Jean Park, thank you so much for being here, and for you as well. We will see you in the future and look forward to bringing you more events like this. Thank you so much. Have a great day.